All right, Madam Chair, I think we can start.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Randy, so much. Welcome, everybody, to this meeting of the Board of Governors. Sharisa is going to do the roll call. I'm going to ask her in a few seconds, but let me first ask all board members to unmute your lines now if you haven't, so that we can go ahead and do the roll call when we're ready. So just by way of introduction, as everybody knows, from time to time, issues come up between our regular quarterly board meetings. And today we have a few topics to take up, including appointing a student member to fill the seat of Governor Stephen Washington, who is graduating this month. So I thank all of you for making the time in your schedule to have this meeting. Okay, so let me now ask Sharisa to do the roll call.
Thank you. Good morning. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Governor Bogle.
Here.
Representative Briggs.
Here.
Governor Gindelsberger.
Present.
Secretary Jones.
She's here. I'm just moving her over from panel into panelist.
All right. Secretary Jones.
Here.
There she is. Thank you. Senator Martin.
Here.
Governor Mazur.
Here.
Governor Moskowitz.
She had a meeting conflict.
Okay. Secretary Ortega. Designee Tanya Garcia.
Here.
Representative Roy.
Here.
Governor Roberts.
Here.
Senator Schwank.
Here.
Governor Scott.
Here.
Chair Shapira.
Here.
Governor Skinner.
Here.
Governor Smith.
Here.
Governor Washington.
Here.
Governor Weaver.
Here.
Governor Yeomans.
Here.
Faculty Liaison, Dr. Phillips.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Sharisa. Next, let me ask if we have any remarks from our statewide union leaders this morning.
Yes, Madam Chair. Chris Hallen is here to speak on behalf of ASCA.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you, and good morning to you all. Chairperson Shapira, Chancellor Greenstein, governors of the Pennsylvania state system, university presidents, and guests. I appreciate this opportunity to present a faculty union perspective as we sail on through the rough seas of consolidation. As you know, ABSCUF represents 5,000 faculty and coaches at the 14 campuses of the state union of state system of higher education. And I'm proud to serve them as vice president with my BFF, President Martin, who unfortunately was unable to be here due to a scheduling conflict. I'd like to give you a view from the trenches. Frankly, morale is low, lower than I remember it ever being before. Morale is lower than the 1980s and the early 90s when department budgets were shrinking. The ability to replace equipment in teaching labs and classrooms was difficult. When having a phone turned on in a faculty office after 4:30 was a presidential decision. As a young analytical chemist, I remember having to make a service call to Varian Corporation, 3 o'clock their time in California. The very understanding chair and I had to use his office phone with him muttering about dinner through most of the conversation. Back in those days, a big question was if a department or maintenance was responsible for purchasing paper towels, toilet paper, or chalk. Morale is lower than the silos of excellence era when the system under Chancellor Judy Hampel tried to focus campuses into regional centers for science, arts, or music. That how was too big a leap, and this effort was eventually stopped by the next chancellor when it was shown it to cost more than it saved. Morale is lower than the days of ballooning enrollments because the only way to get more money to your institution was to bring in more bodies, become bigger than them, and satisfying the formula. This led to ill-prepared students side by side with true student scholars, more remediation work in lower level classes attempting to help some and boring others, burgeoning class sizes, frustrated students, faculty, and administrators. These heady days are now being hailed as our finest hour when we were sustainable. Not as I and my colleagues recall. I almost quit in 2010 as the enrollments of my introductory chemistry class went from 25 to 45 to 61 to 130 in a decade. I stopped being value added with assigned papers connecting students to the science and full written exams to spending hours on Excel or a variety of D2L programs trying to get my Scantron result into a grading package without screwing it up. Being more a traffic cop trying to figure out logistics. How many different colored exams do I need to stop cheating? Than a purveyor of fine knowledge. Students complaining about scheduling for classes, not because it wasn't available, because the one section conflicted with something else. Flash to now, we have a pandemic in action. If I thought cheating was hard to monitor in a classroom, the stories my colleagues tell curl my beard. I choose a hybrid approach at the sophomore level where students could come to lab or watch from home. It took one period for me to realize I was in trouble, that the technology for real-time Zoom in a lab was not there, that the background noise meant I had to hug the computer in front of the lab and hope nobody hurt themselves in the back, that to help students in class resulted in ignoring those at home and vice versa. My students in lab finished on time. Those at home finished 25 or more minutes later. Both of them still online anyway. You can imagine the enthusiasm all of us had for lab 2. Get out the duct tape, we can fix this. Similar issues happened in Zoom classrooms where it was determined if you walk over there to point out something on a periodic chart, you vanished from home unless the picture was so small it was impossible to see, or if someone moved the camera. And forget about voice. Either you were heard, or students present were heard, or the students at home were heard. And no writing on the whiteboard was large enough. This fall, although many of the faculty openly questioned what was being done by the system to protect them from COVID, there was relief to get away from the challenges of the Zoom world. Yes, it works for meetings when everyone is in place, prime and proper, playing with their cell phones. Except for the prim and proper, are students any different? Zoom is not so great in hybrid or mixed modality classes. Someone loses out. Someone has a lessened experience. And as your faculty, we all hope the Omicron derivative doesn't start the whole process over in the spring or next fall. But if so, we, the faculty, would like more active leadership from you, the board. My colleagues and I wonder if we are doomed to a lifetime of overload as retired or retrenched faculty are not being replaced. And somehow it makes more sense to pay me twice what they could pay an adjunct to do the same course. We are told it's because of the student-faculty ratio formula. Another formula as history repeats. Perhaps we should change the formula so that the cost saving can be realized with the ratio. Right now, we're combining sections, canceling sections, making it harder for students to get classes. 2010 all over again, with students complaining about scheduling for classes, not because it isn't available, but because the one section conflicts with something else. My colleagues and I are wondering whether we are next. next to be retrenched as our department enrollments drop below a magical moving number target, a drop that can easily be caused by a program array. Why, for example, at Penn West, must all pre-med students be registered as bio majors? Nothing wrong with biology, but medical schools are open to many majors and degree paths. Shouldn't we let the students decide what they want to major in? More student opportunity, not less. Is anyone asking students in the North Central region what they would think about moving completely to a different campus to get the program they want, or doing a 2+2 type design? My colleagues and I wonder if we will have secretarial support in the new use. Heck, we wonder if the whole state system will be here when our younger colleagues' children need it. We and our students wonder how the consolidated university is going to work. Wonder why a student will come to North Central or Penn West if they need to take online courses or move between campuses. Why not just go to Slippery Rock and stay on campus, or Penn State, or do a less in state support, which has made Bloomsburg more expensive? Go to Gettysburg, because with financial aid, it's about the same cost. We wonder when we will get a real name. Of course, I've got many colleagues at the Western University who wonder the same thing. Penn West sounds like a prison. Are we saying higher ed is a prison and parole is a huge debt to be paid? What do we tell parents at open houses when they ask if such and such a program will be available for their child at the university to be named later? When will we know if the NCAA will allow my team, my mascot, to survive? Over the summer, I had a lovely chat with a couple of Mansfield students. One told me that if she had to transfer to Bloomsburg for her major, she would never make her sports team, and she wanted to know what would happen to her scholarship. While I'm thinking about the students, during the summer, I recall suggestions from more than one board member to get student opinions as this iterative process continues. I must have missed the chancellor's visit to Bloomsburg so we can ask student opinions now that they're back on campus. From a live stream event in mid-November hosted by student newspapers at the North Central U's, it seems students still have lots of questions. I'm tired of consolidation, and I'm not alone. And we have barely started with the hundreds of issues that need resolution. I and my colleagues have been assigned the how with our local administrators. A bunch of exhausted, worn out, low morale, getting older by the minute, wishing I could retire, glad the semester is winding down professionals. Thank you for this opportunity to express the views from ground level.
Thank you. Next, we will provide an opportunity for public comment. Randy, do we have anybody signed up for public comment?
All right, if there's anybody on the phone line who'd like to offer public comment, press *9 to raise your hand, and then we will unmute your line. So we'll give folks a moment. *9 to raise your hand. I see only one caller on the public comment, but they've not raised their hand yet. All right, I guess they do not wish to comment. So there's nobody else here, Madam Chair, or at the Dixon Center.
All right, thank you very much. All right, well.
One second, let me just make sure that the raise hand feature was activated. Just 1 second. Sorry about that. Yes, they are. Okay, good. You're good to go.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so December 1st, we're back for final exams and heading into winter break at this stretch of the semester. And let me express on behalf of the board our most sincere thanks and gratitude to all the faculty, the staff, and university leaders who have helped our students continue in these challenging times and make their way along their paths to success. And your dedication and your tireless commitment that is what makes the real difference. And it's it's so heartwarming when we see that reality with our students who walk across the graduation stage later this month. And so congratulations to all of them in advance as well. Students are our top priority in everything that we do. And that is one reason that we scheduled this special meeting of the board, because we want to appoint our next student board member to fill the seat that will be vacated by Governor Stephen Washington when he graduates in a few weeks. And Stephen, congratulations to you in advance. And thank you for your amazing service. And we will do a proper tribute to you at the board meeting in February. But we are so thankful for your leadership and your participation in board deliberations during some of the most challenging and yet exhilarating votes that we have gone through in the past couple of years. But we did want to appoint the student who will replace you in advance so that there is time for that student board member to be ready for our quarterly meeting in February and get up to speed on everything. And Stephen, I'm supposed to say something about your resolution will not embarrass you, but of course it will thoroughly embarrass you if I have anything to do with it. But let us now go to the appointment of our new student governor. And for that, let me turn to Sam Smith, who is chair of the Governance and Leadership Committee, to introduce the student appointment. Governor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just take a minute or two to remind everybody how we arrived at this action today. Following the law, earlier this year, we sought input from the university presidents by inviting them to nominate one student from their university to be considered for appointment to the Board of Governors. As you may remember, law significantly broadened who would be eligible for appointment to the Board of Governors as a student representative. We made it clear that diversity in terms of gender, race, age, geography, and area and level of study are important so that we have a range of student voices on the board. We also wanted a mix of students who are involved in student government and others who are not. And those nominations that were brought to us created a rich and talented pool of candidates from which the board appointed two students earlier this summer, and will consider one appointment today. In preparation for today's appointment, candidates were interviewed by the Governance and Leadership Committee, along with members of that committee, along with the Chancellor. And based on the recommendations of her president and the strength of her application and interview, we are honored to recommend Skylar Walder of Shippensburg University to serve as our next student board member. But before I make the actual motion for that, I'd like to ask President Patterson from Shippensburg if he would please say a few words on behalf of Skylar.
Thank you, Governor Smith. I do appreciate that. I certainly would like to also thank Stephen Washington for his service on the board and look forward to recognizing his contributions at the next quarterly board meeting. But I could not be prouder to endorse Ms. Skylar Walder as the newest member, soon to be, of Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education's Board of Governors. Skylar really exemplifies the level of campus leadership and engagement of all of our Shippensburg University students. When the university transitioned to student leaders to help design and advance Diversity Week programming, for example, Skylar was there. And she's everywhere you turn, serving as an officer on the Student Government Association, serving on my own president's Student Advisory Council, a peer anchor for our first year students through the first year experience, and a student athlete on the women's tennis team. And this is in addition to the 4 jobs, yes, 4 jobs that she holds both on and off campus while also making the dean's list. Skylar is a champion for SHIP, and she'll be an outstanding asset for the Board of Governors and for the state system of higher education. And I extend my sincere appreciation to Shippensburg's trustees and the members of the Board of Governors for supporting Skylar's nomination. Thank you.
Thank you, President Patterson. So, Madam Chair, I hereby move that the Board of Governors appoints Skylar Walder of Shippensburg University as a member of the board to fill the seat of Governor Stephen Washington upon his graduation in accordance with the state system's enabling legislation as amended.
I
Thank you,
second the
Sam.
motion.
There's a second. Terrific. Thank you, Bill. Is there any discussion?
Board members, you can just click raise hand if you have a question or comment.
Yeah, Randy, let me know. Do you see anything?
I see no hands raised.
Okay.
Oh, there is a hand, Governor Washington.
Governor Washington.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say congratulations to Scott Walder. As a student at Shippensburg University, you can tell that she is quite qualified for this role and will do a phenomenal job in not only serving the students, but the state as well on the board. So again, congratulations and thank you so very much for the time.
Appreciate that, Governor Washington. Okay, then let me call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Please say no. Okay, unanimous. Congratulations, Skylar. Would you like to say a few words?
Well, I just want to say thank you for having me today. But before I begin, I just would like to thank my support system at Shippensburg University for getting me to this point. They all done a tremendous job of preparing me for this role, and I owe a lot of my success to them. And as I step into this position, I look forward to being a voice for the students at Shippensburg and all of the PASHE institutions. I hope I can contribute great work to the state system to ensure it is successful now and in the future. It is both an honor and a privilege to be entrusted with this charge, and I really appreciate you all, and I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we look forward to having you on the board and to working with you. Terrific. Okay, the next item on our agenda is ratification of the temporary side letter with AFSCME. Let me call on Dan and Brian to give a brief overview and answer any questions that board members might have.
Thanks. This is the second in a series of two side letters, one that you've already seen. I'm going to turn to my colleague, Brian Magoo, to walk us through it and provide any context, and obviously be here to answer any questions or issues that arise.
Thank you, Chancellor. Board members, as noted in your packet of information, this side letter that was agreed to by the parties that is before you today is part of the ongoing effort to mitigate impacts resulting from our ongoing efforts with financial sustainability. And a couple items to note in this specific side letter. So the side letter is a side letter that covers 3 years, and that is through June of 2024. And one of the elements of the side letter is in regards to a furlough notice. The current collective bargaining agreement provides a 30-day notice to the union, and so the parties have agreed to extend that notice to 60 days. Second item of note is there's also an agreement between the parties to not contract out any bargaining unit work under the provisions of the CBA if it will cause the furlough or layoff of any AFSCME represented individuals. So this provision does not prevent any university from furloughing or from contracting out, I should say, if it is not going to furlough any AFSCME represented individuals. And then another element of note is the enhanced sick leave payout agreement that had been ratified earlier this calendar year. For the second window of that side letter, the parties agreed to extend the deadline from September 30th to November 15th. And the payout for the second window would be reflective of the payouts noted in the first window. So those are some highlights of the side letter. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Brian. Are there any questions? Randy, do you have any hands raised?
And board members, again, if you just, yes, Senator Martin.
Thank you. Just another point of clarification. Though what is being agreed to in the side letter would not prevent any of the institutions from outsourcing any work. What it will absolutely not allow is the furlough of an employee or a position that you deem no longer needed in relation to that work. Is that a correct statement? You would have to move and create a position somewhere else.
So that is correct. The collective bargaining agreement contains a provision for contracting out, which involves a process. And so there's really two ways that process typically happens. One is if you're contracting out and not involving a furlough. And then the second is if you're contracting out and it does involve a furlough of staff.
So regardless if there's an open position or not to move that impacted employee to, that employee would have to be moved somewhere in the organization with that position. Is that a true statement?
Yes, that contracting out cannot cause any furloughs at all.
Okay, thank you.
Board members, if you have a question, click the raise hand feature or shoot me a chat if you're having trouble finding that feature. Representative Roy.
I think I'm on now.
You are.
I mean, I get it why this is being done, and I've thought about this a little bit. And it usually seems like in a union contract, there's usually some give and take. There's usually, one side agrees to something they want, the other side agrees to something that they want, and there's kind of you get some of what you want, you don't get some of what you want, and we might give on this and they might give on that. Well, a side letter is really just an extension of a union contract. And it seems like, the more I look at this, the more one-sided it is. There's the furlough notice, the contracting out, bargaining unit work, the training, the enhanced sick leave payout, and the health benefits. They all seem to be enhancing what's in the union contract. And I don't really see any offsetting things, go in the other direction. Can anybody weigh in on that as far as which ones of these things would, give PASHE more flexibility or save PASHE money or let PASHE have more options available for when it does come to things like, making arrangements for, different functions that need done, or where's the benefit to the system and where's the benefit to the students?
Sorry, Brian, I'll take that. The discussions that led up to this, Representative Roy, really focused on joint advocacy as an opportunity, recognizing the very precarious funding situation that the universities face collectively. And obviously we've seen evidence of that recently. So that was the thought behind the discussion.
I think the other thing that I'll add is with the enhanced sick leave payout, the more we're able to have individuals leave through attrition, that certainly decreases our reliance on any other changes that need to occur.
Well, I just have concerns with this. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think if somebody's going to get furloughed, if you could tell them 6 months ahead of time, if you could tell them a year ahead of time that their job's being eliminated, that's the right thing to do if you can do that. And if currently it's 30 days, but by practice, people are usually given 60 days notice, I think that's great. I would recommend giving them 90 days notice if we know about it. But if this locks us into 60 days, what if we're already in a very financially precarious situation. What if things got even worse and there's a situation where you had to let somebody go, as much as you hate to do that, having to go an extra month, I don't know. And then an extra month of health insurance for somebody that's not working there anymore. It's not like the system has, all this money, a big surplus every year. I mean, we're really struggling. And I get it, why these conversations go on and why these things happen, but I don't know. I'm just not comfortable with it.
Senator Martin has his hand up. And then Senator Schwank.
Thank you. I appreciate the hard work, and I know they've worked very hard, not only the Board of Governors, but also Chairman Greenstein and Chairwoman Shakira. They've worked really hard to do what's necessary for the sustainability of the system moving forward. Probably more so than any past chancellors or boards have engaged in, especially when it's needed the most. I think where I take issue with where we're going is the fact that every single dollar that we're adding to costs in the current fiscal position that we're in will add either a burden to university budgets, just like the last side letter, or to the students and what they pay, or their families, or to taxpayers. That's what we're relying to put that on. I also think that in terms of when we engage in these side letter agreements, in order to do what's effectively needed to be done in this current environment to right size the ship and to adjust where we need to adjust, that this just slowly erodes at so much of that good work. But I'm also going to take it one step further, because I can say this. I don't lay this at the feet of the current board. I don't lay this at the feet of our chancellor. But I continually be amazed that in order for some of these outside entities and the pressure, whether it's coming from the governor's office or others, in order to support doing the right thing, that they want to try to saddle the system with additional costs. And in many ways, we're engaging in doing things that people who have experienced extreme economic hardship over the course of the last 18 months would never give in the consideration to, but they're going to be expected to pay through this through tuition or through tax-related expenditures. I really hope that in order to right this ship, that we don't continue in this future, and this message is to anybody who was watching, to continue to handcuff various management-related decision-making or things that need to be done, that we don't continue to push off or add costs for things that should be done in order to right-size and sustain the system moving forward. To me, this all work against it. I need to come out of the shadows for those who want to push these kind of deals in order to support what we're trying to do, which is the right thing. And instead, they keep wanting to anchor more costs to this system. So I'll be a no vote today. And I truly hope there's more transparency moving forward, because that transparency is what's going to help in terms of making sure that this system and what it affords to our communities remains in place for generations to come. Thank you.
And we have Senator Schwank and then Representative Briggs.
Can I jump
Sure.
in?
Madam Chair.
First? Oh, thank you. Thank you, Senator Schwank. I appreciate your indulgence. Senator Scott, obviously you make good points. I certainly agree with them. I only wanted to make a couple of points. First of all, there are always two sides to a story. And the other consideration that we have to constantly balance against cost is the fact that we have human beings, that work for this system, that are pouring their hearts out and their labor, right, for our students. What we are doing to be fiscally responsible and to not only sustain the system, but help make it thrive, has an impact and a human cost impact. And we have to we have to also keep that in mind. And it's a tough balance, because ultimately, if you don't succeed, it doesn't do anybody any good. But in the meantime, these are our people and it's our family. So I just want to make that point. The other point I want to make is a little bit, kind of less, less esoteric, but has to do with the fact that this is all conditioned upon that additional funding from the General Assembly that comes from the federal money, the federal stimulus money, and that's understood. So in answer to whether or not this is a new union contract, it's not a new union contract. It is something that is very situational, very specific, and very one-time, and very based on those funds. Now, we received that first tranche of a promise of 200 million, and carrying out this side letter, provisions of it is contingent upon continuing to receive that money from the legislature. So it is not changing the basic structure of our contracts. So I just want to make sure I made that point. If I misstated anything, Brian or Dan or Andy, please jump in. But that's the understanding.
Senator Schwenk and then Representative Briggs.
Thank you, and thank you, Chairwoman. I'll reinforce what you said. This has been a difficult process, and it has had a real human cost to it, not just to faculty, but to the individuals that are behind the scenes, as Brian related to us, and Randy, who some of these folks are. They are people that help contribute to the education that our students are receiving. They are there to build the infrastructure, so to speak, of our universities. I happen to live close to a community where where we have a PASHE institution, Kutztown University. So I've talked to employees. Some of them live in my, actually live in my neighborhood. And I understand what they're thinking and their dedication to the jobs that they do. And they talk about really, quite poignantly how they relate to students and what this job means to them and why they do it with so much heart. And I think we heard President Hawkinson say, and I've heard him say it personally, how, some of our employees are doing more than their share. They're doing maybe a job and a half, if not more, as we go through this transition. There's going to be bumps in the road. This isn't easy, but one thing I don't want to do is to make it harder for the people. They're not just numbers, and it's not just the fact that we've got to get to a certain number of employees, whether it's faculty or whether it's staff. We've got to understand that we need to be humane in this process. And I, as a legislator, feel this is critically important that we address this as well. When we'll be asked to, in budget hearings, to look at how we're going to continue to support the system, we need to be aware of all the ramifications of the decisions that we make. So I'll be supportive of this. I think it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Representative Briggs and then Representative Roy.
Great, thanks, Randy, and thank you, Senator Schwenk and Chair Shapira for your comments. What Cindy said was a lot what I was thinking about as a family, and we knew this was going to be a difficult process. Concerns were raised during our merger deliberations, and I want to thank the Chancellor for following through and negotiating to address some of those concerns. I think these are reasonable modifications to within the side letter. 60 days, that's already been practiced. Making sure that people aren't going to be displaced. Makes sense to me. We're not creating new opportunities. We're repositioning folks. I think this is all very compassionate during a real transition period in our system. So I'll be voting yes. We have to, we always talk about the Pesci family, and I think these are important, very reasonable steps, and want to thank the hard work to get us here.
And last hand on this is Representative Roy.
Thank you. Yeah, I should have mentioned earlier that there have been a lot of people putting in a lot of work. Overall, I agree with almost everything that the chancellor and the board and the presidents are doing. But that doesn't mean I'm always going to agree with 100% and not say anything when there's a particular thing I don't agree with. But I think overall, I think a lot of people should be very, pleased with all the good quality work that's being done. But back to this, somebody said this is not, I think it was Cynthia, this is not a new union contract. Now, it's my understanding, maybe our legal team could chime in. A union contract is a legally binding document. A side letter, if I understand it correctly, is also a legally binding document as long as both sides sign off on it. It's my understanding that a side letter is just as legally enforceable as the main union contract. Is that accurate?
Yes, this is Representative Roy. This is Andy Lehman. It supplements the existing collective bargaining agreement, which is why it is before you. The chancellor's powers under Act 188 as amended are to negotiate subject to board approval, thus bringing it before you, but it is binding upon both parties.
Okay, so not to criticize what somebody said, but in essence, it is a new union contract because the union contract right now says 30 days notice when there's furloughs. So this essentially amends the union contract and makes it say 60 days. And that 60 days is just as legally binding as the original language of 30 days in the original union contract. Is that correct?
It is legally binding between the parties, Representative.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure all the board members are clear. This isn't like a suggestion or a recommendation. This is actually, there's, half a dozen, 5 or 6 things here that we're actually amending the union. So this is a new union contract. I just wanted to make sure.
Representative, I think you hit it when you said amending. It's an amendment to the existing contract.
I mean, this is a matter of semantics. I wasn't meaning to imply that this was not legally binding. I was merely making the point that, like any side letter, which happens actually often, with our contracts, it makes a change. And this one in particular, however, in terms of some of the provisions of it, is also, though, dependent on this source of extraordinary funding, which does make it situational and unique, at least in a way. But I don't want to quibble over semantics, and you're absolutely right that this is legally binding.
And then the June 30th, 2024 date, is that the date that the union contract expires?
Ryan, what's the term?
Ryan, I have to ask you that.
Yeah, the current contract with AFSCME ends in June of 23.
And to remind the representative, we do not negotiate the AFSCME contract. That's negotiated by the Commonwealth.
Okay, I'm sorry, am I reading? Okay, this side letter would go till June 30th, 2024.
Contingent upon the availability of
right, contingent, right, the 15% of one-time funding, but the AFSCME contract expires a year before that.
That's correct.
So why are we doing a side letter to amend the union contract? Why are we using a different date? How come this side letter doesn't expire the same date as the union contract? And then if both parties agreed, this language in the side letter could become part of the main union contract, but I'm not sure why we're extending something a year past the expiration date of the union contract.
It was tied to the progress of the integrations. To the timeline.
Now, a lot of stuff comes across my desk, and I may have missed something early on, but when did these conversations, these 5 items that are in this thing that we're voting on in a few minutes, when were board members first made aware of this, and how long have these conversations been going on with the union?
So conversations started with the union probably in April, May, certainly in advance of the board vote. It was very focused on integration. It was very focused on aligning folks as best we could around integration, recognizing that we were going to be significantly, that we were going to be presenting a significant funding request to the board for approval to take on to the state. It was seeking to align advocacy support from critical leadership. So that was the rationale and the origin. As those conversations moved forward, I did have high-level discussions, not in detail because the detail wasn't available, with members of the board and with elected representatives, I believe, including yourself, but not down to the level of this detail. That we were looking at some measures to mitigate the impacts of right sizing, measures that would not affect our course of right sizing. I do want to remind folks that our board policy is still in place. The policy basically requires our universities to operate in a sustainable way, which means that their expenditures are tied to their revenues, just like every family in this country. They are asked to balance their budgets on an annual basis. And that means that their expenditures will be largely driven almost entirely by enrollments. Enrollments drive 75% of their revenues. So sustainability policy basically means that if we continue to get smaller, we will get smaller in terms of our expenditure and our employee base, because that's the largest component. If we're able to get larger, to really shift into the direction that we all hope we will take, to improve student affordability, to improve success, to improve our students' outcomes, to create more reliable pathways into and beyond the Pennsylvania state systems, then our expenditures and arguably our personnel can grow. But that we are now in that position, and the board's policy will require we continue. So none of this affects the implementation of the board's policy, which requires our universities to operate sustainably.
So when was like the detailed specific language, such as 60 days instead of 30 days of contracting? Yeah. But when was this exact specific language first made, available to the board and made available to the general public?
So you saw because of circumstances beyond our control and beyond AFSCME's, the specific language wasn't really available until, I don't know, Brian, what was it, about 2-3 weeks ago? So
yes, it was November.
Sorry, when was it?
November.
Okay, well, that's adequate time, because a lot of comes across, I have a lot of meetings, so that's my fault there. So if that came out November, like early or mid, any date. I mean, if November 30th, that's one thing, but if this has been around since November 15th or something, people should have had a couple of weeks to look at it.
It was shared with the board on November 19th to draft.
Okay. Now, is that draft the same? Is everything the same?
No changes.
Is the draft? No change. Yep. Okay. Well, that's adequate time. So I commend the chancellor and the other folks for making that language available for that long. I'll take that one. That's on me that I didn't study that prior to a couple of days ago. So thank you.
Governor Smith and then Senator Martin. I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
No, go ahead.
Governor Smith and Senator Martin.
Thank you. I'm going to support this, but it's not because I really like it. And I certainly respect the concerns that have been raised by Senator Martin and Representative Roy in particular. I understand those concerns, and they're to some degree, I actually agree with you for the most part, but we're tiptoeing around kind of some things here, and I've been trying to figure out how to express it in a way that's kind of acceptable. But when we got into integration, there was a misconception that like the integration would solve all of our problems. And I think we all know, or we should know, that that's not the case. It's a significant step, but it in and of itself doesn't totally fix the system. Some of it really has to do with other things unrelated to integration. And the second point I want to make, and why I would support this, beyond the fact that in this particular case, this particular letter, this side letter, the AFSCME employees have, from my perspective, from an IUP trustee, have been very cooperative and understanding of the problems the whole system is facing. And, I think they've been a good partner. But the main problem, the main point I want to make, I guess, is that this system is fragile. And if any one, whether it's integration specifically or our entire redesign plan to get us out of the issues we're facing financially going forward, if any one of the members of the entire system family, if you want to use that word, maybe it's more closer to a puzzle with pieces that fit together in some cases, but if any one of those pieces walks away, then we don't have the full picture. And a lot of this is about trying to keep everybody pulling in the same direction. And I think that's the most important thing that we need to keep in mind. Yes, when you look at the nuts and bolts, there are things to to have some objections with. But when you look at the big picture and where we really need to drive this whole system, we can only do it if everybody wants to pull in the same direction. Because if one of us on any level of this, from the governor's office to a legislative group or a subset of the legislature, or whether it's our employees or alumni, even our local communities that host our universities to some degree, if any one of these partners and players in this decide that, to heck with it, I don't want to be a part of this anymore, they can blow it up. And given how fragile the system is, they're not going to just blow up integration. They're going to blow up the entire system into little pieces. And a few of those pieces will survive and grow back into a whole. But some of those pieces are going to just be shreds blowing in the wind. So I think we got to keep our eye on the big picture here. And I apologize for rambling. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. I think what you said is actually spot on. And that's, keeping your eye on the big picture. You're exactly right.
Senator Martin is the last hand up on this.
Just two things. First is more of a legal question. I heard it asked or mentioned that this contract is actually a Commonwealth negotiated contract. So I'm just asking from a legal perspective, as it was framed as almost being amendment to, the existing language in the Commonwealth's agreement with AFSCME. Is there going to be another step to this that the Commonwealth has to ratify this as part of the agreement? Or is this, help me explain the legalities of it, because I'm always on the understanding is that you have to abide by what's in the agreement until a new agreement is reached. But we didn't negotiate this agreement. It was done by the Commonwealth. Does the Commonwealth need to amend their agreement? Because otherwise, wouldn't the existing contract supersede anything that we do?
So, Senator Martin, I can start this, and then Brian can jump in. So we have the agency to negotiate the side letters. This is done And there's an appendix for each of the independent agencies that do not fall within the governor's jurisdiction that we have the authority to negotiate. This is done, though, this is not done just by the state system and the local chapters. This is done by the state system in conjunction with the state chapter of AFSCME. Brian, you can help me on what, is it Council 13?
Yep, Council 13.
So, no, there is not an additional step in this process. It's just within the purview of the state system. Brian, did you want to add to that?
No, I agree with that. And certainly there's other matters that we deal directly with AFSCME that are specific just to us and don't apply to agencies under the governor's jurisdiction. So, yep, I agree.
All right, thank you for that. And my last comment would be, and just to ask is, under the current system, and when it was removed the system sustainability, we currently have universities who are integrating and places where we need to look to right size and things like that. But we also have schools that are non-integrating. And one of the big issues right now and concerns, which there are plenty of conversations that are going on about, are the amount of funding or lack thereof that is going to the non-integrating schools, and for a period of about 3 or 4 years already, and we're looking at a period of 3 or more years moving forward, where those institutions are not receiving what they would in a more equitable fashion. So the decisions that we make that add costs onto the system, especially in the area related to anything related to personnel, also works against what we hope to return to, and that is those institutions also getting their fair share of the funding from the Commonwealth. So I wanted to add in that perspective because, everyone's watching closely what's happening in places where there needs to be some tough decisions being made. And so it's natural to have a concern about additional costs being added in when in reality, that's lending to a longer time frame until our other institutions are getting more money back that they should be getting in order to help their communities and their employees and their other staff members. So I just wanted that in that perspective. Thank you.
And just to amplify the point, Senator, you're absolutely right. The path that we're on, which is basically an austerity path, good, save money, it works. Sadly, we've become too good at it. That is not what the state needs us to do. The state needs us to expand the number of students and to reduce their total cost of attendance at one of our universities, the last most affordable pathway into the workforce, the middle class and beyond. So as soon as we can begin to dig ourselves out of the financial hole that has been developed over the years since the halcyon days we heard about earlier in today's proceedings, in those halcyon days, students' total price of attendance was about $6,500 a year less than it was at the nearest, least affordable, most affordable option in the state. That number has collapsed. And, again, we have to figure out how to return a path, not for our universities. I'm an educator, I care about students, first and foremost. For our students. Most of them in rural parts of the state who deserve an opportunity, who deserve an affordable opportunity and a chance of living and sustaining lives for themselves and their families. Their future doesn't so much rest on our progress, but it rests on the broader conversation about the level of investment in the state system. This is not about how sustainable we are. We are sustainable as a matter of policy. And as I said, we're getting good at implementing that policy. The question isn't about that, at least in my head. It is about what is it that we want the system to look like and how many students do we need it to serve? So, my hope and our advocacy plan and our campaign and the agreements that we're putting in place with our colleagues are intended to drive that message collectively There are challenges with that, as we have seen. But that is really the only path that will address the kind of economic and social mobility needs of this state. Again, apologies for getting a little overwrought. These conversations are important, but related to what we're trying to accomplish, they're a sideshow.
Randy, did we have anybody else with a hand up?
Yeah, Bill Berry, last hand on this, and then we
All
need
right.
to move on.
President Berry, and then we'll move on.
Just to Senator Martin's comment about the funding formula, just to remind everyone, there is a committee that is well represented with individuals from both giver and taker in quote schools, and I'm confident that we're going to come up with a fair formula in very due time. So that is being addressed.
Thank you. Okay. All right. No more. If there are no more questions or hands raised, I'm going to move that the Board of Governors approves the extension. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one. That the Board of Governors ratifies the AFSCME side letter and authorizes the Chancellor to execute the appropriate documents. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we've had discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say no.
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 Okay, Sharisa, would you please do a roll call?
I sure can. Governor Bogle,
Aye.
Representative Briggs,
Aye.
Governor Gindelsberger,
Aye.
Secretary Jones,
Aye.
Senator Martin,
No.
Governor Mazer, Secretary Garcia, Representative Roy,
No.
Governor Roberts,
Aye.
Senator Schwank,
Aye.
Governor Scott,
Aye.
Chair Shapiro,
Aye.
Governor Skinner,
Aye.
Governor Smith,
Aye.
Governor Washington,
Aye.
Governor Weaver,
Aye.
Governor Yeomans.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Okay, for our last order of business, we will consider the extension of the non-represented employee merit pool. So let me again call on Randy and Dan to provide a brief overview, and then we'll take questions.
Randy, can I just pitch this direct to you in the interest of time?
Happy to. All right, just to provide a quick overview of this for the board's edification, the vast majority of our employees are part of a collective bargaining unit, and they negotiate compensation for their members through union representatives. But for those staff who are not represented in a collective bargaining unit, they can only be provided performance compensation through the creation of what's called a merit pool, and that's outlined in board procedures. These non-represented staff include about 15% of our total employees, and those employees include everyone from accountants, graphic designers, administrative assistants, to program managers and senior and executive staff as well. In 2019, the board approved the creation of a merit pool for the year 2021 for non-represented employees and capped it at the compensation adjustment levels that are part of the faculty collective bargaining unit. The chancellor is today recommending that the board extend the previously approved merit pool to also include the 21-22 and 22-23 fiscal years. You should know the board's action would grant authority to the university presidents and the chancellor to provide that compensation, but would not mandate those actions. And any increases that would be granted must be performance-based and according to the policies and procedures set forth by the chancellor.
Okay, thank you. I am going to make the motion, call for a second, and then we will have questions and discussion so that we can go into the vote after. So I move that the Board of Governors approves the extension of the merit pool for the non-represented employees that was previously approved on October 17th, 2019, to include the 2021/2022 and 2022/2023 fiscal years. Is there a second?
I second.
Second.
Okay, questions and discussion.
Representative Roy.
Thank you. Well, I feel like I'm, I guess if all board members felt the same way about everything, we would change the state law and have a board of just one person. I guess we have 20 board members for a reason. But I have two questions. One's a technical question. How a merit pool raise works, like just for easy math, if somebody's making, some high level non-union person, vice president, somebody's making $100,000 a year. If it's determined that they're going to get a $5,000 merit raise, is that just for that 1 year as a bonus? And then next year, does their salary go back to 100,000, or would their salary permanently stay at 105,000 if they got a $5,000 raise from the merit pool?
I'm happy to take a first crack at that. Creating the merit pool, what it does is it allows for a chunk of money for each university in the chancellor's office. And that chunk of money can be used by the university and the chancellor's office as they determine best. So it doesn't mean that every employee might get the same amount. They may be a gradation based on performance. It could be whatever fits best to that institution's needs. Those increases, if there are increases given to an employee, they are part of their permanent base. They're not one-time bonuses. They are part of the permanent base, and they would roll forward. The employees that this applies to is about 1,400, 1,500 employees across the system. About 2/3 of them are in areas such as like accounting and IT and administrative assistants. About 1/3 of them include program managers, vice presidents, and such. I'll turn to President Driscoll to add more local context.
Thanks, Randy. And I apologize for getting into weeds here, Representative Roy, but I wanted to make a clarification of what Randy had just said. Each employee in this group is in a wage range, a salary range that's been determined by market, although it tends to lag market. And so an employee can't have their salary base increase beyond the top of that range. So some employees could get a one-time payment. In your example, if an employee was in an employee grade based on their work, the job description, that had a maximum salary of $100,000, the $5,000 would typically be a one-time award. It would not go into their base. So there is some connection to market value in those increases so that they don't drive people above that maximum that's been determined for that level of work, if you will.
That's very helpful, President Driscoll. And also point out that employees can only get this if they've had a satisfactory performance evaluation.
Okay. Well, thank you for that explanation. And then on this summary here, it says this extends the previously approved merit pool, for another 2 years. Now, the merit pool was 2.5%, and this would be 4.5%, correct?
This would extend the approval to make sure that it can never go above the APSCUF compensation level changes for any given year. So it's 2.5 in that first year. This year coming would be 4.5, and I think the last year is 5. So it can never go beyond that, though the universities are not required to go that high.
And again, this might be semantics, but it increases and extends the merit pool essentially. I mean, because if it was, last year would have been 3 or 4 million available system wide. This year it's 6.1 million. Just so people know. And I get it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think people that do high quality work, especially people that do work that's beyond what their job is supposed to be, doing additional tasks, seeking out things that really stretches out their job title, getting into things that other people would normally be doing. I mean, they should be rewarded. They should be compensated. I agree with that. But people on the board probably know that I always do watch the money very closely, whether it's in the legislature or on this board. And as much as a system is struggling, I don't know. I just have reservations about this. If you do the math, $7.6 million divided by 89,000 students, that's $80 per student is what this would cost if all the universities utilize this to the maximum amount that they would be authorized to do. And I'm not saying the employees don't deserve it, but at next board meeting we're probably going to be talking about, well, all board meetings really, thinking about future tuition charges. And I realize that I don't mean to ramble here, but every time the system spends more money, we have to charge the students more money. It's even if state funding increases, every time the vote a half an hour ago costs a little bit of money, not a lot, a little bit, but sometimes the little bits add up, and this costs a little bit, and who knows what we'll do at a future meeting. But I just think we have to be careful that we don't spend too much money that we don't have. Thank you.
And Representative Briggs, you have your hand up.
Thanks, Randy. And I just have a couple of questions. Representative Roy gave the scenario of a $100,000 employee. Do we have numbers of what like the average salary is of this category of workers?
Yeah, for the 2/3 that I talked about who are in the lower level category, their averages salaries are around $70,000. And for the 1/3 above that, I had that at my hand. I don't have that at hand.
So there's not, I mean, Representative Roy, and he's a friend, mentioned the vice president. This is all levels of.
All levels.
Yeah.
It would include vice presidents. But,
and then the second question is, there was some press that legislators just received a COLA, cost of living adjustment, which I think starts today. What kind of, as costs go up, what's built in to their salary to make adjustments just regularly?
Yeah, there are no automatic inflators for these employees. The only way these employees can get these performance increases is if this action is taken and the universities and the chancellor's office individually choose to make those changes.
So it would be a pay freeze, another year of a pay freeze for these folks.
Yes, yeah, and non-reps have seen that in years past.
So the concern I had, and I support this. I mean, I think we need to value our employees. Coming from the Southeast, we have a real workforce challenge. Folks are folks are changing jobs. They're being recruited. They're moving around. Have we seen that in any of our schools, that it's hard to hire folks? I mean, I think if we freeze their growth, I don't know how you keep folks that are valuable to the institutions.
And Madam Chair, President Ferrantino has his hand up.
Okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on what Representative Briggs said, and I said, I've said before that we are struggling to hire enough people to keep our good people, and I'm absolutely supportive of the sustainability goals of the system. But from my perspective, that means we need to have the right size workforce. If we start to try to save money by basically underpaying our employees, that's not a good long-term investment in the system. And that's, whatever group of employees we're talking about, we need to make sure that we keep good people so that we can continue to do the work of the universities. And so we need to be careful about how we go about saving money. Right size, absolutely. But to just not approve raises for this entire group of people with everybody else who works here next to them getting raises just seems unreasonable to me.
And President Barry has his hand up. Madam Chair.
Okay.
I'm just going to extend what my colleague just said to make it even more specific. If we don't have the power to reward our best workers, it's our best workers who have the most options who will leave. And then we're trying at a time that's difficult to hire to hold things together with the workers that aren't quite as strong. And just to make it concrete how this will work is, broadly speaking, each one of us will do it a little differently, but broadly speaking, we'll have 3 pools of employees. Those who have not been satisfactory, they would not be eligible for this. Those who have been satisfactory, they would get a mid-level raise, and those who have been exemplars who would get an outsized raise. And we'd all have different versions of that, but I imagine that's what everyone would be thinking. So it is a way to keep our best employees and to keep up with inflation for our solid but perhaps not exemplary employees.
Well, thank you. That would be my concern, is if we don't. I mean, this has been a tough year for everyone, especially in higher ed, and dealing with the pandemic and the rising costs of living in our communities. If we don't make this smart investment, I'm nervous we would be losing really good people. So I am supporting the Chair Shapiro's motion, and I hope it passes. Thank you, guys.
And Randy, just again, can you reiterate, the funding for this it has already been budgeted. This is not new funding or additional funding.
Correct. When the universities receive their guidance on how to build their budgets for the year, they are advised to build in these and contemplate these as part of the budget planning process.
So this adheres to, therefore, our sustainability policy, our accountability policies as well.
Correct. And there are no further hands raised, Madam Chair, right now.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and we've had discussion. So I will call the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, please say no.
No.
Okay, we do have one no, so we need to have a roll call vote, please. Sharissa?
Certainly. Governor Bogle,
Aye.
Representative Briggs,
Aye.
Governor Gindelsberger,
Aye.
Secretary Jones,
Aye.
Senator Martin, Governor Mazur, Secretary Garcia, Representative Roy,
No.
Governor Roberts,
Aye.
Senator Schwank,
Aye.
Governor Scott,
Aye.
Chair Shapiro,
Aye.
Governor Skinner,
Aye.
Governor Smith,
Yes.
Governor Washington,
Aye.
Governor Weaver,
Aye.
Governor Yeomans.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we close, I want to state for the record that the board met in executive session on October 13th from 12:30 p.m. to 1:50 p.m. and today from 8:30 a.m. until 9:20 a.m. to discuss legal and personnel matters. Thank you all very much for your time and your engagement today. Are there any other items for the board's consideration? Okay, hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Randy, are we?
We will reschedule our
planning
workshop
our
for
workshop.
another day, so no
Okay.
need to switch over at all.
All right, we went over, so we are unfortunately going to have to reschedule our workshop, but we will apprise you of that date. And I thank you all very much for your time and your attention on these